I never imagined my son would ignore me for 20 years until fortune changed everything. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. My heart raced, a tight knot in my chest. The air was thick with tension, like a storm just before the downpour. I stood there, trembling hands gripping the edge of the kitchen counter, half expecting him to walk through the door any moment, yet knowing deep down that would never happen. He was gone. 20 years of silence stretched between us like an endless chasm, filled with echoes of unspoken words, lost dreams, and heartache. Then my son, Jacob, the boy who once filled this house with laughter, had vanished from my life. I could still feel the warmth of his hugs, the way his small hands would clutch mine, and the twinkle in his eye when he'd announce at barely 5 years old that he was going to be an astronaut. That boy who loved me so fiercely was nowhere to be found. It was as if he had never existed. Somehow, every phone call had turned into a missed opportunity. Every birthday was a reminder of what I lost. The family gatherings proved unbearable. My sisters talked about their children, their prides and joys, while I sat quietly, a dark cloud in the sunbeam of their happiness. They didn't understand. They couldn't see the hurt in my eyes, the bitterness accumulating in my heart. My husband tried to console me, but even his comforting words felt like hollow echoes in the vast emptiness left behind. So much had changed in those 2 decades. Life had swept along, moving at a dizzying pace. Yet, the ache of a mother's longing was a constant companion. I often replayed those days, the arguments, the confusion, and the moment I realized he wouldn't return home. What had pushed him away? Was it something I did? Was I blind to the signs? Then came the fortune. It arrived like a whisper on the wind, unanticipated and monumental. A distant relative I'd met only once had left me their estate, a sprawling mansion buried in the hills, cloaked in mystery. It was as if fate decided my time in the shadows of despair was up. Perhaps, just perhaps, this place would lead me to him. Maybe it held secrets that could unlock the door to my son's heart. But nothing was ever straightforward. As I stepped into the mansion, the air crackled with an electric tension. It smelled of dust and forgotten dreams, rooms lined with heavy curtains that seemed to trap whispers of the past. As I explored, I felt eyes watching me, shadows dancing along the walls. Why did it feel like this house was alive, holding its breath? In one dimly lit room, I discovered a collection of old photographs. They whispered tales of laughter and heartbreak. Among them, a photograph of a boy that looked strikingly familiar, holding what seemed to be a locket. My heartbeat quickened. What was this? A sudden noise startled me, a floorboard creaking behind me as if acknowledging my presence. I whipped around, heart pounding in my ears. Nothing, just shadows and dust. But a sense of urgency rushed through me. Who else had been here? Did they know the truth? Now, with hope slowly flickering like a candle in the wind, I realized this mansion might hold the keys to my son's silence, his disappearance. It was a beginning I never expected, a chance I thought I'd lost forever. But what if uncovering these mysteries threatened to tear everything apart once more? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I wandered deeper into the mansion, the air thick with shadows and unspoken words. Each room I entered felt like a portal to a past not entirely mine, yet strangely familiar. The walls screamed secrets, but I didn't know how to listen. I clutched the photograph tightly, my fingers tracing the outline of the boy, who looked hauntingly like Jacob. The locket he held in the picture seemed to gleam even in the low light, a beacon of hope in this melancholic labyrinth. Instinctively, I made my way towards the library, a room that overflowed with dusty tomes and memories trapped between yellowed pages. As I pulled one of the heavy volumes from a shelf, a cascade of dust fell like confetti around me, enveloping me in a cloud of forgotten times. I opened the book, and tucked inside was another photograph, this one of a family gathering. In it, an older woman stood with a striking resemblance to my late relative, a distant cousin. Next to her was a younger man, one that radiated the same charm Jacob once did as a boy. My heart skipped a beat. Was it possible? Could this be a photo of Jacob? I had to find out more. Maybe this mansion not only held the remnants of lives lived but also the keys to understanding my son's long silence. Suddenly, an unwilling dread washed over me. What if Jacob had returned to this place, seeking his own answers? The thought made my heart race. I had no idea what shadows he might still carry, how wounds festered and morphed over the years of our silence. As I roamed through room after room, a strange movement caught my eye through a window. I pressed my face closer to the glass, shielding my eyes with my hand. There, at the edge of the property, stood a figure. My breath hitched with a mix of hope and fear. Could it be? I hesitated, uncertainty gripping me. Would I be strong enough to confront my son after all this time? The figure turned and began walking towards the house, and my heart pounding answered for me as I hurried to the door. I opened it just in time to see the silhouette vanish behind a tree, lost among the branches. A rush of adrenaline surged through me, compelling me to pursue this stranger who had stirred the remnants of my hope. As I raced toward the tree line, my mind throbbed with questions. What had Jacob become? Did he hold any anger left for me, or had the years tempered his heart? What if I didn't recognize him? The thought of standing before him without knowing how to bridge those 2 decades paralyzed me, and then I saw it again, the glint of something shiny peeking through the underbrush. I knelt and pushed aside the leaves, uncovering a locket identical to the one in the photograph. My heart twisted painfully. Without a doubt, Jacob had been here. He was connected to this mansion, the same way I sought to be. I clutched the locket, the weight of its presence heavy in my palm, feeling as though it carried the burdens of unspoken apologies and regrets. Just then, a gentle rustle of footsteps sounded, closer now. A voice floated through the quiet air, tentative yet clear, "Mom." I froze, disbelief washing over me like a tidal wave. I turned slowly, fear and hope colliding fiercely in my chest. There he stood, a man grown, but a flickering resemblance of that small boy I'd lost to time. His eyes, though, held a storm, a mixture of love, hurt, and confusion that both thrilled and terrified me. "Jacob," I breathed, barely able to articulate the name that had hovered on the tip of my tongue for so long. His expression shifted, a fragile blend of surprise and guardedness. "What are you doing here?" he asked, a hint of bitterness coloring his words. Each syllable felt like a fragile glass, ready to shatter under the weight of our history, and just when I thought I might reach out, to heal the wounds of 2 decades filled with silence, he turned away, that fleeting connection slipping through my fingers like grains of sand. "No, you have no right to be here," he said, a painful ache in his voice, echoing my own heartbreak. I stood frozen, filled with an urgency to explain, to beg for understanding, when my phone buzzed suddenly in my pocket that I fumbled to pull it out, and as I glanced down, I saw a message flashing on the screen. "You won't believe what I found. We need to talk. Meet me at the Old Oak." The unfamiliar number sent a chill down my spine, as a new shadow fell over my hope. "Jacob, wait," I called, but he was already turning away, walking deeper into the trees. Everything I'd longed for was slipping away again. What had I unearthed within these walls? Secrets that could either mend our broken bond or tear it apart even further. Uncertainty loomed over me, and for the first time, I wondered if legacy would be my greatest gift or my most profound curse. The weight of his rejection echoed in the silent space between us, punctuating the absence of our shared years with a deafening finality. I turned back towards the mansion, heart racing and chest tight. Shadows now felt heavier, cloaking every corner of the overgrown grounds in an ominous haze. The wind whispered ancient secrets through the trees, teasing me with reminders of warmth and familiarity. I found it impossible to reconcile those memories with the man I'd just seen. The stark lines of his jaw, the sadness etched into his features. The message on my phone lay heavy in my palm, glinting under the hue of the dying sun. I hesitated, my instincts torn between confronting the past in Jacob and chasing a stranger, oblivious to the new thread I might tug if one connected to a mystery pulling me deeper into the dark heart of this mansion. But then, which choice could heal the rift between my son and me? Could every answer lie at the roots of this unknown connection? With a deep breath, I knew I had to find out. I turned and sprinted down the path to the old oak, its gnarled branches stretching out, forming a protective canopy, hiding truths that longed to be revealed. Just as I pulled the locket from my pocket, memories of Jacob flooded back, innocent laughter peeking through cracks of my consciousness. I thought of his tiny hand grasping mine, of the way he would bury his face in my neck, free from worries or judgment. But that boy was gone. The man who had turned away was the embodiment of loss, anger, and waiting, a portrait of fractured love. When I reached the oak, the ground felt softer beneath my feet. I spotted a figure lingering near the tree's expansive trunk, a silhouette against the thickening darkness. I approached cautiously, heart thumping, whispering a protective prayer to the air that surrounded me. "Hello." I called out, my voice quivering with uncertainty. The figure turned, an unexpected surprise unfurled in the face of a woman I didn't recognize. Her piercing green eyes studied me intensely, brows drawn together in concern. "You came," she said, and there was an urgency in her tone. "I was afraid you wouldn't. That I got your message," I replied, half expecting a stark explanation, yet feeling the need for this encounter. "Who are you?" "I'm Lily," she responded, her voice softening. I used to come here often, growing up. I knew Jacob when we were kids." Her eyes flickered to the ground, as if the earth could somehow bear the weight of shared childhood secrets. "I've been looking for him. And I found something I think you should see." She produced a worn-out journal from her bag, the spine cracked, pages yellowed, almost whispering for attention. "When I heard you were in town, I couldn't shake the feeling that you might need this." She offered it to me, her hands trembling slightly, as if she understood the enormity of the contents within. My fingers brushed against it, a connection blooming, yet hesitance lingered. "What is it?" I asked, my heart heavy with dread. Lily hesitated before answering. "It belonged to his father." The wind howled at the edges of the clearing, wrapping cold fingers around my spine, drawing chills from my core. Jacob's father, the man I had once loved, lost, and subsequently buried under layers of grief. "Why does it matter?" I whispered, feeling the walls of my world inching closer. "Because," she continued, her voice trembling, "it reveals secrets about your family, secrets that might explain why Jacob left, why he thinks the way he does." A flicker of fire breathed life into my chest, hope and anxiety dancing together in a frenetic rhythm. Did he say anything to you, anything about me?" I demanded, the desperation bleeding into my words. Lily's gaze softened. "He didn't mention you directly. But he has been searching for answers all along. Just like you." I took the journal from her, feeling its weight settle into the depths of my soul. Every heartbeat echoed the unanswered prayer for connection, and I found myself wondering if the very vessel of pain could also cradle the possibility of healing. I flipped through a few pages, each handwritten line drawing me deeper into the labyrinth of our histories, until a particular passage caught my eye. The words leapt at me, illuminating my heart before extinguishing it. I lost them both and never knew why. I never understood why she chose to walk away. I looked up abruptly, fear gripping me. What does this mean? What did he mean? Lily inhaled deeply, seemingly preparing for the weight of truth. It means that you need to find him, to help him unlock his past, together. The answers you seek rest with Jacob, and vice versa. You both are tied to something beyond your understanding, but you have to reach him first before it's too late. My heart raced into the tempest of time, a swirling mass of loss and longing. And just then, from a distant voice echoed through the trees, the unmistakable sound of Jacob calling my name. I felt every nerve in my body pulse, the urgency of his call ricocheting through the silence, demanding my attention. "Mom!" He shouted again, this time so close I could almost touch the desperation behind his tone that I turned to Lily, eyes wide with realization. "Please, I need to go," I rasped. She nodded, understanding the stakes. "But you have to promise me something," and let him walk away. "Not this time." As I rushed back toward the calling voice, the journal clutched tightly against my chest, I felt everything shift. The air seemed charged with potential, the course of our lives about to collide once more. Yet the uncertainty lingered, feeding against fragile hope. What unearthly truths awaited us? And would our attempts to reconnect only lead to further disarray? Each step forward felt weighted with shadows, as the haunting whispers of the mansion curled around me, encroaching upon my every breath. "Jacob, I'm coming." I called, heartbreaking yet mending with every step, unsure of all that lay ahead. But when I reached him, I knew I would have to confront the truths we both buried deep within. If I didn't, perhaps those very truths would shatter us for good. The sound of my son's voice reverberated through the trees, yet each syllable felt like a haunting echo of the years we had lost. "Mom!" His tone was laced with urgency and confusion, wrapped in layers of emotions I could only begin to comprehend. Each step toward him felt like both a homecoming and an apprehension, like traversing a tightrope stretched over an abyss of unresolved pain. As I burst into the clearing, the sight of Jacob standing there, his tall frame silhouetted against the twilight, stopped me dead in my tracks. We were face to face for the first time in years, and the weight of years and unspoken words stood between us like a chasm. He looked different, of course more defined, more guarded, but the essence of that boy I once knew lingered in his eyes, a flicker of recognition gleaming through the storm of emotions clouding his gaze. "What are you doing here?" he asked, sharper than intended, but there was an edge of something else beneath his defensiveness, surprise, maybe even vulnerability. My heart raced as I tried to gather my thoughts, the journal still clutched tightly between trembling fingers. "I came because I wanted to talk. About yous, about everything." He shook his head, a distressed expression marring his usually composed facade. "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice a long time ago." The previous rejection from Jacob echoed in my mind, a painful reminder of how quickly the fragile strands of our relationship had frayed. "Please, Jacob," I begged, the words spilling out like a desperate mantra. "I truly need to understand. I've been looking for answers, for you, for everything." He ran a hand through his hair, tension radiating through the set of his jaw. "You don't even know what you're asking, Mom. You just show up after all these years and expect me to spill my life to you. It doesn't work that way." The familiar sting of his anger hit me, a reminder of how our once close bond had twisted into something rife with resentment. But as I looked deeper into his eyes, I also saw the flickering remnants of a connection we once shared, buried beneath years of hurt. "Please," I implored again, stepping closer. "I was given something that might change everything." "What is that supposed to mean?" he demanded, crossing his arms tightly over his chest, as if bracing against an impending storm. With a deep breath, I presented the journal to him, watching as his expression shifted from skepticism to surprise. "This belonged to your father," I said softly, the weight of each syllable pressing heavily in the air around us. "It holds fragments of our past, and it could help us understand why things are the way they are." Jacob's eyes widened at the mention of his father. The crack in his armor was apparent, and I could almost feel the walls he had built beginning to tremble. Yet a cloud of anger shadowed his features, keeping him from reaching for the book. "You still think you can bring him back into this? You think any of this matters?" "I think it matters. It matters more than you know," I urged, battling against the emotions welling within me. "You've been searching for answers, Jacob, and so have I. Maybe together, we can unlock the truths we've both been shielding ourselves from." He hesitated, and in that moment, I clung to hope, the idea that perhaps we could bridge the chasm between us with shared understanding. Yet, the shadows of the past loomed large, threatening to swallow our tentative connection whole. "I don't even know you," he finally whispered, the fierce bravado falling away to expose the rawness beneath, a sadness that seemed endless. Each word tore at my heart. "Why should I trust you now, because I never stopped loving you, I said, my voice breaking under the weight of those words. Even when I was lost, even when I felt like there was no way back, I never stopped caring. Just then, a timid rustle in the bushes drew my attention. A small Creaturia rabbit, perhaps darted across the clearing, a shard of innocence amidst the tension. Perhaps it was a sign, the universe sending a reminder that even among chaos, life persisted. Jacob glanced over as well, and for a fleeting moment, the tightness in his expression softened, revealing the tender heart that I had always known was there. You should have fought harder, he muttered, and my chest tightened with the realization that he was still laboring under the belief that I had chosen to walk away. Didn't know how, I admitted, tears welling in my eyes. But I'm here now, trying to make it right. I'm tired, Mom, he confessed, barely above a whisper. I'm tired of running, of dealing with the ghosts of our past. It just hurts too much. The crack in his voice set off an ache that coursed through my veins. Then let's face them together, I said, holding his gaze, willing him to see that this moment could be a starting point, but just as he opened his mouth to respond, a sharp noise cut through our fragile bubble, the sound of footsteps crunching leaves behind us. We both turned abruptly, hearts racing, eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. Emerging from the shadows was the woman I had met earlier, Lily, her expression drawn tight with new urgency, panic threading through her features. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said, breathless, but you need to know there's something you both must see, something else I uncovered in the journal. Just as she reached out, the sky rumbled ominously overhead, a storm gathering force, mirroring the turmoil within us. In that instant, I felt the weight of the world shift, and I knew we stood at the precipice of something far more profound than I could have ever anticipated. What do you mean? Jacob's voice echoed, a shared confusion and fear threading us momentarily together, connecting us through our shared anxiety. But just before Lily could respond, the skies split open, and the rain began to pour, drenching us in torrential waves. Each drop felt like a thunderous reminder that the storm we had all been avoiding was finally here, and with it, the possibility of revelation or disaster. Get inside, I shouted, grabbing Jacob's arm, feeling the cold rain gnaw at our resolve. But even as we turned toward shelter, I couldn't shake the knowledge that this storm wasn't solely from the clouds. It had awakened the tempest within our souls, one that could either drown us or push us to confront the truths we both needed to face. And as we hurried beneath the shelter of the aged oak, I glanced back at Lily, uncertain yet hopeful. What had she discovered? And would facing those truths bring us all closer, or would it shatter whatever fragile bond was beginning to grow once more? The storm of uncertainties loomed closer, wrapping us in its embrace, threatening to unveil everything we had tried so hard to bury. The air inside the shelter was thick with tension, punctuated only by the rhythmic pitter-patter of raindrops pelting the ground. The oak's gnarled branches stretched overhead like the protective arms of nature, but my heart raced as I faced both my son and the fear creeping in like the damp chill of the storm. Jacob stood close, his jaw clenched tightly, and I could feel the weight of his unresolved pain like a lead ball in my own chest. What did you find in the journal? Jacob's voice cut through the silence, piercing the hesitation that had settled between us. The urgency in his tone betrayed a flicker of desperation, a yearning to uncover the truths he had pushed away for so long. Lily's breathless energy did little to quell the storm swirling in our hearts. It's complicated, she said, raking back a damp strand of hair from her forehead. But I think it might explain some things. Things about your father. About family history. My heart sank as the words hung heavily in the air. Jacob's expression shifted, and I could see the conflicting emotions dancing across his face. The storms raged inside him as fiercely as they did outside, and for every moment of curiosity, a crush of anger threatened to drown it out. Why should I believe you? He spat, his voice taut with mistrust. But I could sense he wanted to. Deep down, he was still that little boy searching for the truth about who he was, about who we were before everything fell apart. Because I believe this is important for both of you, Lily said, her voice steadier than her frazzled demeanor suggested. I wouldn't have come here if I didn't think it could help. That I placed my hand on Jacob's shoulder, feeling the taut muscles beneath my fingertips. I searched his eyes, willing him to see the sincerity in Lily's words, the potential for understanding and perhaps even healing. We can't let anger barricade us from the truth, I urged gently, hoping to bridge the gap between his uncertainty and my desperate need for connection. The rain intensified as if the sky itself echoed Jacob's turmoil. He shook off my hand with a quickness that spoke volumes. You don't get to decide how I feel or whether I trust someone, he snapped, turning away to face the downpour instead. But before I could respond, Lily stepped forward, clutching the journal like a lifeline. Listen, Jacob, she said softly, her pulse quickening. The entries. Your father wrote about things that might help you understand why things happened the way they did, things that even I didn't know until I started reading. About secrets, some dark, some good within this family, secrets. His voice was low, curiosity piqued, yet fear danced just beneath the surface. What secrets? Lily opened the journal, her fingers racing over the pages, scanning the hurried scrawl of my husband's once buoyant script. There's a part where he mentions a letter he never sent. He was going to share some truths right before the words faltered and hung in the air, charged with a sorrow that enveloped us all. Before what? Jacob prodded, breathing heavily as he regained control over his emotions, each word a mix of longing and indignation, but just as Lily was about to reveal more, a loud crack of thunder echoed through the clearing, startling us. The sound reverberated in my chest, as if reminding us of the dangers hidden in secrets unspoken. Let's get somewhere dry, away from the storm, I suggested, trying to foster a moment of clarity amidst the chaos. We can look at the journal more closely without this noise. No. Jacob interrupted, his tone sharp. You're not hiding behind the rain to avoid this conversation. I want to hear it all. The determination in his voice was unyielding, a fierce embrace of the challenges we faced. Lily took a deep breath, grounding herself. Fine. There's a mention of a family secret involving someone named Eleanor. Someone important in your father's past. It seems he was devastated by a loss connected to her, and it's been haunting him and you. A shudder rippled through Jacob upon the mention of the name. I could see the gears turning in his mind, and I feared for the emotional toll this information would take. Eleanor. I felt the phantom weight of memories rush back, a name I had tried to bury deep, unearthed now by fate's cruel hand. Who is she? Jacob demanded, his voice almost desperate as he leaned in closer to hear better, the mix of curiosity and fear woven tightly together. She was his first love, I admitted before I could talk myself out of it. I had thought I could control how and when he learned the truth, the buried past I had hoped to shield him from, but the words spilled out, unraveling my tightly wound resolve. He lost her before we met, and it tore him apart. I think he never entirely let go of her memory. It was a part of why he struggled. No, Jacob said in disbelief, stepping back as if a blow had landed squarely against his chest. You're telling me I have to live knowing I was second best? Jacob, no, I rushed to correct, stepping forward. You weren't second best. You were his heart, his everything. But grief and guilt, my voice cracked again, the weight of mourning years beyond our time together weighing heavily on me. But just as I reached for him again, hoping to pull him back from the brink of hurt, an unexpected look of understanding flickered in his eyes, a small moment of connection that lit a glimmer of hope in my heart. Maybe it's time to stop running from all of this, Jacob finally whispered, vulnerability cutting through the anger. As he took a small step back towards me, a warmth spread through the storm-wrought air. It was then that the wind howled through the trees, the world outside swirling with fury. But in that moment, I felt something shift within him, a tentative willingness to confront the past together. I don't know if I can forgive, he whispered, the storm still raging but his words softer now. But I'm here. I want to know. The rain continued to beat down, nature's relentless reminder that nothing was ever truly calm. But as we stood together within the shelter of the oak, I knew a fragile bond was forming. Just as it appeared we might unravel the layers of pain that had kept us apart, a sudden crashing sound erupted, something breaking through the underbrush like a battering ram. Jacob and I exchanged wide-eyed glances, the momentary shimmer of understanding eclipsed by a new wave of dread. What was that? Jacob breathed, grounding himself against the rising anxiety. Before any of us could react, the darkness beyond the tree line shifted, and a figure pushed through the foliage, stumbling into view. The rain poured around them, but in that moment, clarity lit that shadowy outline until we realized with shock who stood before us. "Mom." The voice, thick with disbelief, was unmistakable. A woman with familiar features that mirrored Jacob stepped hesitantly into view, soaked to the bone yet brimming with a fearsome determination. With the bombshell revelation hanging in the air, my heart plummeted. The past had come crashing down upon us, and the secrets we were finally brave enough to approach had just grown tangled and infinitely more complex. The rain fell in torrents, creating a chaotic symphony of droplets against the earth, but inside that shelter, time seemed to freeze. The woman standing before us felt like both a ghost and a miracle, and I could hardly breathe as I surveyed her familiar face, now a constellation of hardship, pain, and undeniable love. "Mom." Jacob's voice shattered the silence like lightning. It was a question drenched in disbelief, but the shadows of recognition flickered in his eyes that I stood rooted to the spot, disbelief coursing through me like venom. "Jessica." I finally managed to say, my voice trembling as I stepped forward. I felt a rush of emotions colliding in my chest, love, anger, confusion, and an eerie sense of hope. "What are you doing here?" She was the embodiment of the past I had tried so hard to shield Jacob from, the heart of our shared history that had nurtured him but had also driven us apart. How could she have resurfaced now, at this moment when Jacob and I were poised to confront the painful truths of our lives? "I had to come," she said, her voice hoarse and edged with desperation as she pushed her damp hair from her face, revealing the scars of battles fought in silence. "I heard about the storm. I couldn't stay away." The air crackled with tension as Jacob's disappointment morphed into vulnerability, and I watched him tear between desire and betrayal. He had spent so many years living with the absence of his mother, the weight of her abandonment etching a deep scar across his heart. "You couldn't stay away." His words were laced with disbelief and pain. "You left, Mom. You left us both." Jessica recoiled as though his words were blows, pain flooding her expression as the truth of Jacob's accusation landed heavily in the air. "I know," she said, her voice breaking. "But I thought I wouldn't be good for you. I was afraid." "Afraid?" Jacob echoed, taking an uncertain step back, anger simmering just beneath his skin. "You think that made it easier? To just vanish?" His fists clenched by his sides, the storm in his heart perfectly reflected in the tempest raging outside. "I made mistakes," she admitted, stepping forward again as if the space between them was both a chasm and a bridge. "But I've spent every day regretting my choice. I didn't want to hurt you or your father. I thought he could give you a life I couldn't. I wanted to intervene, to wrap my arms around Jacob and shield him from the hurt that seeped through their words. But this moment belonged to them, and all I could do was watch from the sidelines, each breath heavy with unspoken needs. As the rain poured through the branches of the oak above us, I felt a sharp pang of sadness, recalling the long nights I spent wondering if Jessica ever thought of us, if she found peace in her choices. "Those choices hurt him deeply," I whispered, my voice barely rising above the ferocious downpour. "He needed you." Lily stood off to the side, silently observing, her own heartache reflected in her furrowed brow. It was unwelcome to see everything we had just begun stitching together threatened by the very fabric of our past. "Then why did you come now?" Jacob pressed, desperate for clarity, love repressed beneath a mountain of anger. "Why not sooner? Or later?" "I came because I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of running away from the truth," Jessica replied, taking a tentative step closer to Jacob, her hands reaching out, trembling as they approached. "I need you to know that even if I was gone, you were always on my mind. You both of you are my heart." The words were like a haunting melody, but they didn't offer Jacob the balm he craved. Tears spilled silently down his cheeks, evidence of the battle waging within him, the longing for a connection that now felt intertwined with the agony of betrayal. "You can't just show up and expect everything to be fine. Do you even realize how much we had to endure?" "I didn't," she choked back a sob. "But I want to understand. Please, let me in. I want to make it right." Make what right? He spat, incredulity lacing his tone. You can't just erase 20 years. You said you didn't want to hurt us, but you really did. You broke us. Her hands fell back to her sides as if Jacob's words had the weight to physically knock them from her grasp. There was a heaviness in the charged air, one that spoke of years of silence, regret, and loss. Less than a few feet away, I felt the walls of my heart tremble under the strain of longing for unity amid the fractures. In that harrowing moment, Lily reached out to me, squeezing my hand as if to remind me of the fragile thread connecting us, an unbreakable bond forged in love, pain, and resilience. The storm won't stop raging, Lily murmured, her gaze a mix of empathy for Jacob and determination for all of us. But we can find shelter together if we allow each other in. Just then, a flash of light illuminated the clearing, a bolt of lightning striking nearby, deafening in its arrival. The impact reverberated through the trees, causing all of us to instinctively flinch. In the chaos, however, it was Jessica who steadied herself, and with unexpected tenacity, she stepped forward again. Jacob, I may not have been there when you needed me, but I'm here now. Her voice rang with a newfound resolve. I can't undo the past, but I want to exist in your future, if you'll let me. The storm raged on, the air thick with uncertainty. The door to the past had swung wide open, revealing raw wounds still fresh beneath the surface. But beneath the weight of those revelations, a kernel of hope sprouted, tender and fragile against the darkness that continued to envelop us. As I watched Jacob's conflicted expression, torn between hurt and longing, I wondered if he could find within himself the power to forgive, the strength to embrace the woman who was once the beating heart of his existence. I held my breath, caught between the belief that the past could be rewritten and the terror that it might forever remain a haunting echo, and just as I thought we had reached a turning point, another crack of thunder tore through the night, fierce and unforgiving, and with it came the knowledge that our journey was far from over. The fissures that divided us had only deepened. For hearts converged amidst the rain, and what lay ahead loomed uncertain. But I sensed that within the tangled complexity of our lives, hope could still flicker like a flame amid the storm, daring us to embrace the light. The storm raged on, its relentless rhythm echoing the turmoil unraveling within us. The dim light cast by the evening sky created a backdrop filled with shadows and uncertainty, something I had once thought we could avoid by merely holding on to the fragments of our lives. But with Jessica's sudden re-entrance, everything I believed was now at the risk of collapse. Please, Jessica pleaded again, her voice tinged with desperation, give me a chance to explain. I'm still your mother, Jacob. The remnants of her hope coiled against the anger that thickened the air. Jacob's eyes darted between her and a past he had tried so hard to forget. He shook his head, refusing to meet her gaze, as if doing so would pull him into an abyss he had spent years climbing away from. I don't need your explanations, he spat. What I need is for you to have been there. To have actually cared. In his voice, I could hear a fragile thread of yearning stitched between his words, a desire to feel the love he had missed, tangled in layers of hurt. It was tearing him apart, and my heart ached for the little boy who had once gazed at the world with innocent wonder and innocence Jessica had shattered when she chose to leave. Suddenly, through the swirling tempest and muffled words, I noticed Lily stepping closer to Jacob, her presence like a soft warmth amid the cold, chaotic storm. Jacob, she said gently, her voice a soothing balm, this is hard for both of you. You know your mother felt she was doing what was best even if it was the wrong choice. For a fleeting moment, Jacob's expression softened, and I could see the conflict brewing in his stormy eyes. She wanted to feel compassion, but the scars ran deep. You don't understand, he murmured, turning to her but still feeling the weight of unresolved emotions. Lily took a steadying breath and squeezed his hand tighter. But you do. You know isolation, the pain of feeling unwanted. Isn't it time to let that pain breathe a little? Their connection reminded me of the fragile threads of hope interwoven with pain, and it sparked something within me, a hope that maybe there could still be healing. Jessica, visibly struggling with her own emotions, clung to Jacob's every word, her own eyes shimmering with unshed tears. I'm here now, Jacob, she whispered. I wish I could go back and change everything. But I want to be present for you. I want you to let me try. With each shaky breath, the walls that separated them seemed to tremble, but it was Jacob's silence that filled the void. The stillness stretched, and I could feel time slowing, the dynamics shifting imperceptibly as the rain poured down in fierce streaks, creating a heartbeat of its own in the chaos around us. Why should I believe you? Jacob finally asked, his voice raw and fractured. What's stopping you from leaving again? Jessica paused, searching Jacob's face for understanding. Nothing, she admitted, sincerity threading her words. I can't promise that I won't make mistakes, but I want to stand by you and actually face whatever comes next together. A flicker of vulnerability crossed Jacob's features before anger once again grounded him momentarily. Together? He laughed bitterly. You don't even know what together means to me. You had every opportunity. The storm continued to roar around us, but within its fury, a distant rumble of thunder echoed, a reminder of the fragile nature of our truths and the capriciousness of fate. Beneath the pressure of their unraveling past, I sensed that something vital was at stake. At that crucial moment, I realized we were caught in a web of interconnected fates, woven from unquenchable love and reckless choices. Each heartbeat captured the essence of our conflicting truths, and for the first time, I felt an overwhelming urge to breach the distance between us all. Can we start fresh? I ventured softly, finding my voice in the surge of emotions. Can we find a way to rebuild, not just for Jacob, but for you, Jessica? Is that even possible? In the wake of my question, the air chilled as both Jacob and Jessica hesitated, their eyes locked in a silent battle of hopes and fears. It was as if the storm outside mirrored the tumult within them, concealing the light that longed to break through. That I want that, Jessica finally whispered, her voice trembling with an undercurrent of resignation and desire. I want to be a part of your lives again, truly. But before Jacob could respond, a blinding flash of light illuminated the clearing, and with it came a piercing bolt of thunder that split the air, sending a shockwave of chaos spiraling through the trees. In an instant, I turned toward the sound, feeling the earth tremble beneath my feet. The storm had an urgency that felt grounded in something more than weather. It was a reflection of our inner turmoil breaking free. And then chaos struck. A tree branch, thick and heavy, snapped in the wind and fell toward us. Get down! I shouted, instinctively pulling Lily close, but I could feel the dread rising as I turned back to Jacob and Jessica. The world erupted in noise, the thunder of its fury blending with the panic that rushed through the clearing. As I watched the branch plummet, time seemed to slow, the reality of our tension taking form in an unthinkable decision. In that split second, I realized our fragile reconciliation hung in the balance of choice and chance, posed to either reshape our destinies or shatter them yet again. Would Jacob reach out for his past, or would the shadows consume them both? The air crackled with impending devastation as chaos took hold, and I braced for the impact. Hope and fear wove together into an unforeseen conclusion, a new chapter waiting to spiral toward an unknown fate as we remained bound by love, pain, and the unpredictable wrath of the storm. The adrenaline faded as the storm's thunder rumbled softly in the background, signaling a lull in the chaos. I blinked against the sudden silence, the aftermath of frozen moments filling my senses. The air felt heavy with unspoken words, the tension still vibrating between Jacob and Jessica. My heart raced in the wake of having narrowly escaped a catastrophe, one that could have altered the course of our already troubled lives. Jacob stood frozen, his expression shifting from shock to a carefully masked anger that threatened to erupt. Jessica, on the other hand, seemed momentarily paralyzed by the reality of what had almost happened, her face etched with a mixture of fear and longing. Are you okay? I asked, attempting to ground us in the moment. I stepped closer to Jacob, who remained distant, eyes cast down toward the ground where splintered wood lay. That he nodded, but the movement felt like a denial more than an affirmation. I don't want to talk about it, he murmured, brushing past me. Lily stepped forward, her voice soft but steady. Jacob, this is all so hard, this isn't helping. He snapped back, the wave of frustration sweeping through him like the storm itself. One moment, I think I might be able to let her back in, and the next, "I'm back at square Oni kid, abandoned by the one person who should have been there." His words struck hard, afflicting us with the weight of his pain. I could see the fire of his hurt flickering dangerously close to self-destruction, and it broke my heart to watch him spiral. "Jacob, please." Jessica's plea came wrapped in an urgency that seemed both desperate and hopeful. She was reaching for him, but he recoiled, the invisible barriers taking shape again. "Don't," he said, his voice low and trembling. "Don't come any closer. I don't want to be hurt again." In the silence that followed, I could sense the tension curdling their renewed connection back into isolation. Yet in that very isolation, I caught the glimmer of Lily's unwavering support. She moved closer to Jacob, gently nudging his arm to draw his attention without forcing it. "Jacob, we all make mistakes. What matters is how we choose to move forward. You don't have to face this alone. We can figure this out together." He shook his head, the emotion swirling in his eyes reminiscent of a turbulent ocean. "But what if I can't?" In that moment, a small spark ignited deep within me, understanding dawning that perhaps love wasn't just due to the sweetness of moments shared but also encompassed the sharp edges of pain and vulnerability. "Jacob," I said gently, "it's okay to feel lost. It's okay to not know how to move forward. What's important is that you're willing to try." At that, the clouds above parted ever so slightly, revealing a pale sliver of blue sky. It felt like an omen, a glimpse of the possibility lurking just beyond the veil of our storms. But before Jacob could respond, another clap of thunder shook the earth beneath us, more menacing this time. Rain began to fall again, heavy and sudden, pouring down around us. It felt like the universe was mocking our fragile resolve, washing away the sliver of hope I had just tried to nurture. "Let's get out of this storm," Lily suggested, her voice barely audible over the deafening downfall. She gestured toward the small cabin we had taken refuge in long ago, our sanctuary that somehow felt more like a haunted house now. "No." Jacob shouted, the fear in his voice rattling me. "I can't go back there. It reminds me too much of everything." "Hey," I interjected, moving to stand in front of him. "That cabin isn't just a place. It's part of our story. It's where we became who we are." "Except who I am is filled with abandonment and anger," he replied bitterly, yet I saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes. "What if we go back there and make new memories?" Lily proposed, her spirit undeterred by the storm outside or the turmoil inside. "We could fill that space with laughter, with connection." Jacob stood in profound stillness, the rain drenching him as he considered her words. It would take more than merely wishing for change, the act of returning could symbolize more than just a physical space. It could represent the willingness to confront his pain. But just as I thought we might be touching the cusp of something akin to resolution, Jacob's phone buzzed violently in his pocket, shattering the suspended moment. He fished it out and blinked in disbelief. "What is it?" I asked, immediately sensing the shift in his demeanor, a hand hovering near my heart as dread flooded through me. "An emergency alert," he murmured, glancing toward the horizon. "They're evacuating the area. There's been a landslide. We need to leave now." With his words hanging like a hammer ready to fall, I felt the world unraveling as the storm continued to howl around us, reinforcing the sense of impending doom. The warmth of a possible connection was extinguished by fear, and once again, we stood at the precipice of a decision. Would we run from our past yet again, or would we risk the unknown to face what lay ahead? As we turned toward the cabin, I noticed Jessica's eyes, shimmering with something haunting, the realization that she might lose both her son and the chance she had fought for. In that moment, amid the chaos, a decision hung in the balance, tethered precariously to the unforgiving wrath of the storm, making me question everything we had hoped for. I grabbed Lily and Jacob, feeling the gravity of the choice before us, even as thunder rolled ominously above. Would we turn our backs on the past one more time? Or would we dare to forge a path forward together, no matter the risks? The rain enveloped us like a shroud as we sprinted toward the cabin, the air thick with palpable uncertainty. I could hear the pounding of my heart match the rhythm of the raindrops, each one a reminder of the urgency of our situation. Jacob ran ahead, his posture rigid, while Jessica hung back, her face pale, contemplating the distance that still remained between her and her son. As we entered the damp interior of the cabin, the scent of wood and wet earth wrapped around us, almost comforting amid the chaos outside. The flickering light from the solitary bulb illuminated the familiar surroundings, and it struck me how, in the face of storm and turmoil, this place had once been our safe haven. Jacob stood near the window, gazing out at the torrential downpour. The raindrops streamed down the glass like tears, blurring the world outside. His tension was palpable, and I could sense the storm within him was thrumming just below the surface. "We can't hide here," he said sharply, fixing his gaze on the horizon where the mountains loomed ominously. "They're evacuating. We have to leave." His voice was filled with an urgency that both scared and motivated me. "Jacob," I urged, my voice steady despite the chaos, "if we don't talk about this, we'll be running from more than the storm." I stepped closer to him, hoping to bridge the chasm that had formed again after moments of potential reconciliation, but before he could respond, Jessica stepped forward, her eyes searching his face. "Honey, please," she said, her voice trembling. "This isn't just about the evacuation. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But running away is not going to solve anything. We need to confront this together." He turned to her, and the look on his face was stormy, a mix of disbelief and lingering hurt. "Together? You left me, Mom. How do you think I can just forget that?" The words hung heavily between us, the unresolved tension spilling like the rain outside. I watched as Jessica's eyes shimmered, reflecting a mix of regret and determination. "I know it's not easy. I know I was wrong. But I'm here now, please let me in." The air crackled with the weight of unspoken emotions. My heart ached for Jacob, torn between the need to distance himself from the past and the desire so desperately human to connect. Suddenly, there was a loud crack, and the lights flickered before plunging us into darkness. A sharp gasp escaped my lips, and I could feel panic creeping into the edges of our frantic reality. The storm outside roared as if in agreement, shaking the very foundations of the cabin. "Jacob," I called out into the pitch-black room, my heart racing, "can you light the lanterns?" His hands fumbled through the dark until he found a box of matches against the wall. The small flame illuminated his face, revealing the conflict etched into his features. In that brief flicker of light, I caught a glimpse of the boy he once was beneath the weight of his anger. "I want to believe you, Mom," he finally whispered, his voice breaking as the glow of the match cast shadows across his face. "But I don't know how. I don't know if I can." "Believe in the possibility," Jessica said softly, her voice like a caress against the storm outside. "You don't have to do it all at once. Just take a step. Let us be a part of your life again." I watched as Jacob struggled against himself, the fight in him palpable. There was a flicker of hope in Jessica's plea, the kind that comes when love tries to pierce through layers of hurt. But as Jacob stepped back from the light, it felt as if that hope could disappear as quickly as it had appeared. Just then, a deafening crack of thunder echoed, louder than before, causing the cabin to shudder. The lights flickered back on momentarily, but beneath that brief glow, a deep vibration resonated from outside, making my stomach drop. "Something's wrong," I shouted over the roaring storm. "We need to move now." We rushed to the door just as a loud crunching sound came from the mountainside, an ominous sign that the earth was giving way. Jacob darted forward, pulling Jessica with him, while I followed closely behind, fear coursing through my veins like venom. As we spilled out into the tempest, the rain lashed against us, but I felt a tremor of determination rise within me. With every step, I was convinced that despite the chaos, there was still a way through our sorrows. But just as we made it to the clearing, Jacob's phone buzzed again from his pocket. He hesitated, his fingers shaking as he pulled it out. The look on his face shifted as he read the message, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Jacob? What is it?" I asked, a knot tightening in my throat. "They just found a body," he stuttered, his voice cracking under the weight of the words. It's someone from town." In that moment, the storm felt insignificant compared to the icy spread of dread that surged through us. We stood on the brink, not only of our fears for Jacob and Jessica but of a community facing an unimaginable tragedy. Nothing could have prepared us for the tidal wave of emotion that hit next. As the rain continued to pour and fears swirled around us like the storm, I felt the dreadful realization settle over me. The fragile line that held our family together was now potentially connected to something far darker than our own wounds. What lay ahead now felt like a fracture only the storm could mirror. Would we find the strength to confront the tides of loss together, or would this revelation drive us deeper into the heart of our struggle? The storm raged on, but all I could feel was the heavy silence that enveloped us as Jacob's words hit like a brick wall. A body. Someone from town. The storm outside felt impotent compared to the tide of fear washing over us, an insurmountable wave pulling at the edges of my hope. We stood there, drenched and trembling, poised on the threshold of disaster as if waiting for a confirmation of our worst fears. Who? Jacob breathed, his voice barely cutting through the chaotic storm. He squinted desperately at his phone screen, his face pale, the realization settling on him with suffocating weight. That I don't know, he quickly replied, panic igniting in his tone. All they said was that it was an accident near the old mine. My heart raced, a tempest of anxiety and uncertainty spiraling within me. This was not just a body, it was a life lost, a heart silenced before its time. The crushing reality of our world began to feel more significant than the intrigue of our family history. Could it be someone we know? I asked, hoping against hope that the answer would slide into the realm of the improbable, but the look on Jacob's face told me everything I feared. It could be anyone, he whispered, tremors coursing through him like electric shocks. Suddenly, the distance I had felt from him slipped away beneath our shared dread, a reminder that we were tethered by more than just our lineage. We were two souls stranded in the swirling chaos of an unpredictable world, bound by an unbreakable yet fragile thread. Jessica, standing beside him, was pale as a ghost, the remnants of her strength faltering against the truth of his words. She started, voice trembling, I can't believe this is happening. The dark clouds rolled overhead, the rain beating down harder now, but I could feel the shutters of connection growing between us, shared understanding born from turmoil. We need to check on the townsfolk, I urged, my voice firm even as my heart raced with apprehension. Whoever it is, they'll need support. We have to move, and just like that, the storm outside felt less like a raging cyclone and more like an inexplicable rallying cry. I glanced at Jacob, pleading with him to hold on to the sense of duty that braided our hearts together. We might not be able to change the past, but we can offer help wherever it's needed now. With a fragile exhale, Jacob nodded slowly, determination flickering to life in his eyes alongside the undercurrent of fear. Okay. Let's go. As we rushed through the thickening rain, instinct kicked in, propelling us forward like a stream of shared purpose. The cabin loomed behind us like a specter of our past, giving way to the chaotic veil of new burdens we now sought to confront. The muddy ground sank with each hurried step, but my heart lightened with gratitude that we weren't facing this storm alone. Jessica ran slightly behind us, the path ahead heavy with uncertain futures, but I could feel her presence pushing through shadows of doubt. She had fought hard to reclaim her son, and now, there was a fight for the community survival we all needed to shelter within. As we passed through gates wrought with uncertainty, there was a heaviness in my chest that whispered that this might be the moment we needed to create a channel of compassion not just for each other, but for all those affected by a loss unacknowledged too long. The old mine stood grim in the distance, an ominous shadow against the backdrop of relentless rain. My thoughts raced ahead, what awaited us there? The prospect of loss burned at the edges of my heart like a jagged ember, but this time, I could feel the flames of resolve pricking at the depths of my fear. We can do this together, I urged, my words ringing through the downpour, each syllable forging a connection between all of us, binding our collective readiness to face the unknown. At last, we reached the mine, the air hung thick with trepidation as we approached the gathering crowd, faces painted with despair lining up like shadows, each lost by the enormity of grief. But just then, Jacob turned toward Jessica and me, an evident realization dawning behind his troubled gaze. Hey, he said softly, the urgency melding with empathy, we need to help them understand. Let's go. With that, we stepped into the undeniable truth of the moment, all past grievances set aside, our bond strengthened by adversity. It felt not just like a confrontation with tragedy, but a courageous step toward healing. Side by side, we laid our hearts bare to the unknown, ready to share the warmth of connection amid the cold sting of heartbreak. As we joined the others, the rustle of whispers filled the air, and what began as the storm's tumult morphed into resonant chants of remembrance. It felt, perhaps, like a bittersweet symphony where we could simultaneously embrace our shared strength while holding tightly the losses we could not ignore. They say storms are temporary, but the scars they leave can last a lifetime. I took a deep breath, inhaling the promise of redemption as the rain began to ease into a gentle drizzle. We were still here, still fighting, still forging ahead. Amid the sorrow and loss, something beautiful flickered. "I don't want to lose you again," Jacob murmured, his voice steadier than I had ever heard it. As we stood together beneath the raindrops, a fragile courage filled the air, and I understood, we were ready to face this journey together, and with that, I knew in my heart, we would bridge the gaps created by time and Pina collective resolve to rise from the shadows and into the light. The new dawn was waiting, shimmering beyond the mind's mouth, and with it, our chance to redefine what family means, creating echoes of love amidst the backdrop of a world painted with loss. In that moment, as we rallied around those in grief, in the swirling scar of storm and shadows, I whispered softly into the rain, "Together we'll find our way home."